Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. Does racism still exist? Well, that's a tricky answer. It's a more complex answer. There's a yes and a no to that. It depends on how you answer it. So before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. One of the most troubling things that's been going on over the years, and I don't know exactly how we can solve it, but in answering the question, does racism exist? I'm going to show you how it exists today, but the problem, of course, is how do we answer the question? There are people that will say we don't have racism today, and when people make that statement, they are talking about from a legal perspective, and that is true. We do not have legal racism. In 1965, the last of the civil rights bills dealt a death blow to the state-sponsored racism of the United States. But here's the question that we always also have to ask: did racism end? So the question is, what is racism? Well, racism is the attitude, the thoughts, and actions of a person who feels that they are superior to another person of a different race. I.e., white people think they're better than black people. White people think black people are inferior, and they have used their power and their resources to oppress black people. They have done that for 400 years, ending in 1965. But in order to have laws and actions, you had to have a heart. So the question is, did the heart change in 1965? And the answer is, with a lot of white people, no, it didn't. But even more disturbing today that we see, even in liberal circles, okay, Hollywood is one of the most racist places, even though it's supposed to be the bedrock of liberal thought. And yet it's one of the most liberal. Remember a couple of years ago, Oscar was so white. But even a more troubling trend is, here's how we see racism today. Today you see this term Karens, right? Becky's. And it is white people, mostly white women. But I'm also say white people that feel that they are superior to black people. Here's how these actions show up. And now there are scores of videos, just Google them, they're all over the place, where you see white people intervening, intruding into black everyday lives. The most interesting thing is the vast majority of them, because I got to make room for maybe possibly there might be one or two where it's a legitimate concern or legitimate crime, but the vast majority is white people approaching black people who are doing everyday, ordinary things like walking, barbecuing, swimming, living, driving, on their way to work, on their way home, trying to get into an apartment building. And a white person will stop them and ask them, do you belong here? What are you doing here? Why are you in the park? See, that's the kind of racism we see today. One of the more dangerous of the Karens who try to weaponize, the police. And just think, one of the great things that have come out of the horrific George Floyd's murder by the cops is that people are taking a very, very close look at this weaponizing of police. That you just can't call and go, a black guy did it, a black person did it. Because then the police would come running with guns drawn. You see, in the past, we've had that. In the past few years, that has happened. You've had people who will call, and I don't understand why the police don't take more measures. I'll get to that in a moment. But one of the most horrific things you've had, that black men have died because white people have called. In some cases, even black people have called. But they didn't call with no malice. Tianta, I forget her last name, but this was in Fort Worth, Texas last year, who was playing video games with her nephew. And a black man actually called, a neighbor called and said, I just want to do a well-being check. Now he didn't know the horrific events would unfold when a white cop would go in and shoot this woman to death in her own home. But let's go back to some of the ones who are more malice. There was a white guy who called the cops on a man who was just doing everyday shopping. His name was John Crawford. This was in Ohio, I think out somewhere in the Cincinnati area. He was shopping. He had a BB gun in Walmart. You know, Walmart carries BB guns. Okay, so the cops come up and the white says there's a black guy waving a gun. Cops came in 53 seconds later, shot John Crawford to death. They were cleared, by the way, of the charges. Another horrific event, Tamara Rice, playing in the park with a toy gun. A person called them. And all of a sudden, when the person called them, called the police and said, hey, looked like a man, maybe a kid, whatever, playing, waving a gun, whatever. It might be a toy gun. Cops show up, drive up within 20 feet of him, and within 2 seconds, shot 12-year-old Tamara Rice to death. Oh, he was acquitted too. See, these callers are weaponizing the police. So what can be done? And thankfully, but it's a slow process, some jurisdictions are now passing laws against these callers. In more recent times, you've had what's called the Karens, the Central Park Karen, who actually said this. He said, I'm going to call the cop on this black bird washer. That's what he was doing. She got offended because he told her to put a leash on her dog, which by the park rules, the dog was supposed to be under a leash. Well, Karen didn't like that. Her real name is not Karen. I don't even know what her name is. But what was more disturbing was that she called the police. She said, I'm going to call the police and tell them a black guy is assaulting me. And then when you see this on film, this lady didn't care that she was being filmed, and she dramatized. When she got on the phone, she went into a hysterical act. Well, she was fired from her job. I mean, we could go literally on and on and on with people who are weaponizing the police. This is the racism that we see. Literally go on, and we can see where, for example, now Karens, and Karens, by the way, just a kind of a nickname people are throwing with white women who are going crazy. Also black men, white men, that feel this need that they can step and say to a black person, give me your papers, figuratively speaking. By the way, the term giving your papers, if you were a slave and you were traveling on your master's business, you had to have papers showing ownership, because if you didn't have the supposed papers, one or two things could have been assumed and happened to you. One, they could have said if you're not belong to anybody, they would take you. Somebody would take you, and you become a slave. Worse, you'd be treated as a slave catcher and then punished. So you would have to have papers. Okay. Well, this is the attitude with a lot of these white people to come along and want to ask black people, well, I don't see you around this neighborhood. What are you doing here? One of the things that Ahmad, I think his name Ahud, who got killed, right? Even before the George Floyd, just a couple of months, back in February, but the story came out, I think about a month before George Floyd, where he was in a house under construction, and people these two white men took it upon themselves to chase him down, end up killing him. They're in jail now. But that's the racism today, is that, you see, they don't say the N-word. They don't, well, these guys did. But the Beckys and the Karens are not going to say the N-word. They're going to give you the list of their black friends. But yet, when they see a black person that they don't know trying to come into their apartment building, we demand to know who you are. I'm taking it upon myself. All right, guys. That's my perspective. Look here. Please don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, your comments are welcome. Till next time, I'll see you then.